Hello and welcome to another episode of Let's Talk Wargaming. I'm your host, Don Maidlow, and I've got another special guest. They always seem to be special, but this one is very special. So this is Aidan Brocklehurst. He is from Team Mind Goblins.
Up the gallows.
Hey, so the reason we've got Aidan on today is because LGT has just happened. The last episode was LGT, and we had some players from different teams coming on. We had Tom Lowe and a couple of guys from Mind Goblins. And Clement, but we have someone who made it through the gauntlet of the London GT, going completely undefeated until the shadow round. And this is Aidan, and today he's going to talk to us about how he managed to do it, what army did he take, what did he think about the meta, and everything like that. So yeah, Aidan. So how did you find LGT? Was it the biggest and best event ever, or was it hot, sweaty men in a room, and how was it?
Well, one interest. So my friend who I went with, he said when we got back on Sunday night, he said, "Wow, on the middle tables, the fart smell was really bad." So maybe there was actually a secret privilege of playing towards the top end of the room where you had a little bit more breathing space. It was definitely the biggest. It was probably the best. It's definitely my best result. So I'm going to call it the best event.
I think it's the best event.
It's the headline of the calendar, isn't it? So
yeah, exactly. So going into the event, what was your sort of thought process of building a list? Like how did you come out? So your list. Let's talk about it now, actually.
Yep.
So your list is dangly bits, and you're playing Space Marines, but you're going Gladius Task Force as Dark Angels.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so far in 10th, I'd been playing with Deathwatch because that's one of the armies I've played in the past. And when we saw the rules for Deathwatch, there was definitely some fun and some power there. I'd say I was doing all right with them. I'd managed the 4-1 at the GT that we were both at. But then Deathwatch, as we know, were hit pretty hard by the nerf bat, and that left me with about a month to go before LGT. Not really sure what my faction was going to be, and having some of that time away with work, it was... Did start to wonder what I was going to play, because I also play Sisters, but I don't have the right stuff for the Sisters armies that people are trying to fashion. I didn't really want to collect another Sisters army. So the idea to try some Dark Angels came from proxying the Team Poland list against a friend, just trying to, we're having a bit of a practice session. I was trying to play a few different armies into him. So I tried my Custodes, and I tried this Polish Dark Angels list, because I had all the models basically except the Terminators. And I thought, wow, I can finally use this Land Raider Redeemer. Redeemer gets too stuck on the train, was my thinking. So having settled on basically building a list around the Dark Angels Terminators, the Deathwing Knights with their 2-up save and -1 damage, and then the Aggressor Bomb. And then I started trying to work out what to do from there. We were talking about it quite a lot in the Mind Goblins chat, particularly with Louis, who was also taking Dark Angels. And the angle I decided to go in was to try and add a lot of 2-up save damage reduction models. So that ended up being two Redemptor Dreadnoughts and the Brick-Up Terminators. And then the Gravis Captain as well, who often ran around on his own, also with a 2-up save, thanks to the enhancement, and reducing damage and a 5-up feel no pain. So he was like a mini Dreadnought.
Ooh, that's tanky. That really
just
tanky.
People are like, what's he doing? It's like, well, not much, but you can try and kill him if you want. And unless they had sort of some like high damage attack to get into him, or lots of dev wounds or something, it was just harder to kill than his points were worth. So that was basically the function of the list, was to provide a lot of tough bodies with 2-ups, access to armor of contents, damage reductions, and then you can start trying to target the bits of the opponent's army that might actually threaten that. And then on top of that, I got what I think forms the sort of skeleton of any Space Marine list I want to build going forwards, which is the Infiltrators with the Phobos Librarian. All of the UKTC missions, I thought that holding the home objective was very important. There were none of those ones where you only score points in the middle of the board. A lot of them where we played priority targets or take and hold a lot, in which you were scoring 5 and 10. So allowing someone to come in and steal your home objective I thought could lose you a game basically on the spot, especially if that ends up. If someone draws capture on the outpost, peers around the corner and goes, I reckon I can do that, then you could just lose a game on the spot. So that unit I thought was essential to screen out the deployment zone. Because there's a big gap in the back corner that we didn't used to have. That home objective is slightly further towards the middle of the board. So there is a gap at the back board. And then we had a couple of units of Inceptors, 2x3 plasma, I think these are going to be even better in some of the new detachments. But that 3-inch deep strike is just really good. It's not just for home objectives. But when people move onto a side objective and you think, oh, I can just squeeze in here, and then you can get some extra 3 damage plasma shots coming out. Because one of the things I was thinking about was potential mirrors, and getting up to 3 damage against damage reduction is quite good. So if there are Agenters and those, so potentially had quite a lot of 3 damage plasma. Then there were some scouts, some sniper scouts, Gravis Captain. What else was in the list? I think that's all of it. So the aggressors have the Apothecary Biologist as a combination that people have worked out. So you can get sustained and lethal 5s. So,
wow, that's actually quite potent, because I was going to ask you about the aggressor bomb, because one of my friends, Elliot, he's been really in the aggressors, and he's always been like, Gravis is cool, but then I played against him, I'm like, no, Gravis is good. It's really good.
Yeah, because when you're building a tough list, then you've already got these 2-up save damage reductions. So I thought, let's not have any easy kills in there except the scouts, who are out doing scout things anyway. So I was going to take an assault intercessor squad, because I thought, well, I need some OC here, and they can potentially flip an objective. But then they became a heavy intercessor squad, because for slightly more points, you're just adding more Gravis bodies.
And they're cheap as well. It's only 105
points. Yeah,
wow,
5 guys. They actually have quite a good gun. People kept saying, "Is that strength 5?" And I was like, "Yeah, 3 shots. They're just better. It's just a better version of an intercessor gun."
Oh, they're cheap as well.
They can advance an action, so they get around being slow. Like the assault intercessors could only actually move 6 in action, because they don't have
if you don't want to sacrifice some key units, you can quickly just
they can
go corner, do an action, off you go.
Yeah, had the Calidus assassin for mission play, so we've not actually gone through the list in order here. We're just sort of
So I'll read it out for everyone. So we got
that's probably helpful.
We have the characters. We got the apothecary, the captain in Gravis armor. We got the librarian in Phobos armor. So I've been seeing a lot of Phobos librarians. What's the tech here?
So when they are leading a unit, that unit cannot be targeted outside of 12 inches. So functionally, it gives the load operative rule to a unit, which combines particularly well with infiltrators, because you can't land within 12 inches of the infiltrator unit. And they also give that ability to the character that joins them. So you have a unit where you can't land within 12 and then can't shoot them outside of 12, which means to deal with them, you actually just have to walk up to them, like do it the old-fashioned way. And there are a lot of armies that particularly don't like this. You're thinking GSC, Grey Knights, anyone that wants to bounce around the board a bit or deep strike on you.
It's hard to trade with that unit as well.
Locks down a lot of space in your deployment zone. Like in most maps, them and basically one of the unit could screen out even a 3-inch deep strike into your deployment zone at all.
Wow.
At least make the angles very difficult. Demons can do that. So there are quite a few armies with those shorter deep strikes or abilities to charge out of deep strike, like Grey Knights again, or anyone that can give them some sort of reroll or boost to charge. Then just saying, no, you're completely outside 12, can't charge. It just makes it very hard for people to mess with your backfield.
Yeah, it also keeps you control of the game as well. It gives you a unit where you can potentially just sit on an objective, scoring points, using it as bait for people to come out and interact with it.
Yep.
And you have something a bit heavy hitting behind, ready to just come and crump them back. And it's not really a joke, that unit either, because they're gonna be in cover, they're gonna be hidden, they're probably gonna be doing new actions.
Well, they have the stealth. The Phobos librarian also gives them the stealth ability as well. So you've got an extra minus to hit, and some factions just really don't like negatives to hit. So
see if you get close.
A single -1 is more impactful than it used to be, I think. So.
Yeah, I like that. I like that tech a lot. And then you've got the battle line unit. You've got heavy intercessors, which you just talked about. Then we go into the aggressors, a 6-man, and you've gone for the bolt storm. Oh, right, yeah. So you get the auto wounds and the exploding, which you said before. They're also
you need to roll to hit in order to make that work.
Yeah, which is
they're going to slap in combat more. Mine kept rolling 3s to hit, but now they're going to hit on 3s, so they're better in combat now.
Oh god. So then you got the big brick of Deathwing Knights. Obviously, people know what Deathwing Knights do. They're almost 500 points for almost like a irremovable object, aren't they?
Yeah, like some units can get through them. I don't think they died during the events. Very vulnerable to night spinners. Let's say that. But
yeah, because they can just slow them down, can't they?
Yeah, I mean, we'll probably talk about more of the games in a moment. But
So then we finish off with two interceptor squads, just for doing actions and good damage. Infiltrators, double redemptor, double scouts, and the assassin. Yeah, nice all round list. Like, it has a lot of scoring potential. It has a lot of durability in there, and it's got some guns, a lot of high plasma in there, and the sneaky aggressors, which are gonna do a lot of damage, especially as you kind of we all kind of felt like you needed to tech for Necrons. And the aggressor, I should imagine, was the tech for the Necrons there.
Yeah, that was a Necron Warriors Elite button. I think they have something like an 80 or 90% chance, depending on exactly which defensive buffs they've stacked on the warrior brick to get rid of them in an activation. So people were trying to deliver these in a Redeemer. In too many of the maps, the Redeemer gets stuck.
Doesn't it?
My friend played against a Land Raider in, I think, a World Eater's army, and said he described it as a beached whale, like it couldn't get anywhere.
It just can't go.
So they could either start on the board, or I started to find they were quite good coming out of strategic reserve, depending on what the likely targets were going to be.
Yeah, I totally understand that. So I'm going to go to the round one now and just see what you had, because I would like to see, but if it doesn't load, it's not loading quick enough. So can you tell us what your round one is, and then just do a brief summary of how you
round one was Eldar. If I can get mine to load, then I can actually remember people's names, because they're all good opponents. Where's it going to be? That's coming current.
Eldar's a tough one as well. Eldar is a tough one.
Yeah, nice guy. A Welshman. Not an easy round one at all. I was certainly going into this thinking this is going to be difficult. How are we going to go about it? I thought that getting the first turn was going to help, because then the Deathwing Knights at least get a move, so they're towards the middle of the board.
They're just stuck, aren't they?
He had two what do they call the fire prisms, the ones that link fire with their anti-tank shots.
Yes, fire prisms.
Then only one Night Spinner. So I did feel that if I could get to the Night Spinner somehow, potentially dropping the Inceptors on it, then there was a chance of sort of unlocking my Terminators.
Yeah, that's true.
I was quite the Night Spinners will, so they do 2 flat 6 damage shots. So Redemptor will reduce that to 5, but then it's left on 2 wounds and will die to whatever. So I decided to reserve both of the Redemptors, because I thought hiding 3 Eldar holes on a Dawn of War is quite
difficult, isn't it?
I didn't think
outflank, you get the angles. Yeah.
So I thought if I can bring on 2 Dreadnoughts, put Oaths on a Night Spinner and kill it, then there's only 1 left to shoot back, and then I could potentially get the Dreadnoughts into the game, and then if we can get some chance to attack the Night Spinner, we unlock the Terminators, which sort of went to plan. He had an Avatar, which he pushed at one side. The heavy intercessors contested its objective. It killed them. And I thought, right, the aggressors can deal with the Avatar fairly well here, because the lethal hits get around all that high toughness, doesn't care about damage reduction. Sadly, he overwatched most of them to death, which
of course, yeah, it's just what else I do. They have a shooting phase.
If you've got 1 shot with sustained D3, and it's well, fate dice is 6, so I've hit. I've got 3 more hits. That's 4 dead. What's supposed to happen? So I spent the rest of the game just trying to block the Avatar from taking my home objective for as long as possible, whilst playing at his home objective. There were definitely some close moments. The Dreadnoughts shooting that Night Spinner they needed to kill also tried to split off a bit to try and remove some Rangers so that my Terminators could charge a Warwalker, at which point my dice said, you're trying to split fire. Wouldn't it be funny if we shafted you? And the Night Spinner lived on 1 wound. So I thought, no, I really messed this up. And then the Dreadnought made its 9-inch charge and made up for it. So it completely whiffed its shooting, and it was like, no, I've got this, and went charging in. It'd be easier if we just shot it to death, but we ended up in the same place we were supposed to be, via a detour.
So that's quite a hard round one. Did you, after you finished were you knackered, because it's a lot of brain power getting around that?
Yeah, it was, but I hadn't had a huge amount of practice with the list going in, so I was just going to take it round by round, and thought, at least I've got through round 1 with a win. It's one step closer to a reasonable finish.
Yeah, 100%.
He ended up going 3-2, so he recovered to do pretty well.
That's really good. That's really good, though.
It was good. It was a good player with a solid list. So next up, I had it was called Pierce from Team Island. Said he'd been to WTC about 5 times or something with Team Island. Really nice guy as well. I loved all my opponents. He was playing Death Guard.
Oh,
with
yeah. This was a tight.
Mortarion.
This was a tight score,
this was
wasn't
a
it?
3-point win. It was probably the closest and most interesting end to a game because it was very tight. He took fixed secondaries. He had a lot of Plague Marines. He had a few Rhinos. He had lots of characters, some of which were just running around on their own because they've got assault weapons, can actually do the actions.
That's great. It's
He had
great.
Mortarion. He had just one Plague Burst Crawler, a few Terminators, Typhus, just quite a lot of stuff, lots of units because a lot of his characters went on their own. I think at the point at which I hadn't gone fixed Assassinate, then he could just use his characters to do things.
Yeah.
This was, I'd only played with Death Guard once. I'd borrowed my friend's Death Guard to just play them in a sort of silly game, but felt like I was trying to get blood out of a stone. So they feel a lot better now. The contagions really seem to matter. I think Death Guard are probably in quite a good spot in which they're a fairly sort of balanced mid-tier army and a player that knows them and get the mileage.
Let's just go back to Death Guard then. So because I like to use this opportunity for all the matchups that you face to just give your opinion on the armies that you face.
Yeah,
so obviously we know Eldar, they're broken, they're horrible, but you managed to get the win just because you have a lot more durability than he has. Here we're going into a durability meets durability. What makes Death Guard good?
So he picked the contagion where he was going to reduce my save, which into 2-up saves, the fact that you now have a 3-up save, you can't then get back to a 2-up in cover because you can't go from a 3 to a 2 in cover.
Yeah.
So one of my main tools of saying I don't care about AP1 or AP2 against my 2-up saves is essentially gone. So though the damage reduction was going to help, because you've got a lot of 2 damage, although Mortarion allows stuff to avoid that, the fact that he was going to reduce my saves once he got close to me just gave his army a way round one of the obstacles that I'm trying to put in front of him.
Yeah.
It was a strange game because he also took Storm Hostile Objective. His theory being I've got to stand on some objectives at some point, right? And then he's got lots of OC2 Plague Marines out Rhinos and he'll flip them off. But this was the hold more, kill more mission. So in hindsight, he did say this afterwards. He should probably have just gone cleanse because I didn't need to stand on an objective other than my home objective. So essentially at the start of the game, I calculated, I thought, right, he's going to get 50 primary points because you can get a lot of primary in this mission. If you get hold more, kill more, you get 16 points in a round. So I thought if I let him have 50 and I'll try and close that deficit as much as possible by getting hold, kill, and in some rounds maybe I can kill more. And then whatever, and then if I don't let him get any Storm Hostile Objective points, then he's going to cleanse mostly in the midboard. So he's going to end up with around 15 to 18 secondary points. And I'm drawing cards. So if my cards can make up the primary deficit, then I could win. And if they don't, then I'm going to lose. So it felt a bit like a game of ninth in which you can try and predict your score ahead of time rather than when both players are playing cards. But I still had to draw cards. And thankfully, I had enough points on the cards to get through. As he started moving towards the home objective, I actually backed the infiltrators off and said, right, have that one. I'm holding this one on the side now with the heavy intercessors and the aggressors. Because I think the aggressors had boosted the apothecary up to OC9 or something, so he could camp on there. And he would have won if he'd been able to storm that objective with his tank in the last turn. And we had to get a judge to work out whether or not he could make the charge, although it needed to kill like a whole body in combat, which it wasn't likely to do. So in the end, we clung on for a 3-point win, but it was a very tense finish. We both really enjoyed this game.
It's good tactics, and it just shows you how adaptable your list is. And if you just work out the winning conditions and put your dice in the hands of the cards, sometimes they can reward you. But yeah, that's great. So that's the second game, double win. We've talked about Eldar, talked about Death Guard going into. Was it Knights?
Round 3.
Yeah.
He had Knights. He was playing Custodes with 3 baby Knights.
Yes.
This was it's called Adam, who runs the Beachhead events.
Yes, it is.
So he was going strong on 2. Someone I've seen around quite a bit, but never had a game with before. And obviously he was going quite strong on 2 wins with his Knights. He had 2 of the Custodes Graf tanks, which have got a good ranged anti-tank gun, which scares the Dreadnoughts a bit.
Yeah, they're solid because they get to reroll wounds or something like that.
Yeah, They definitely did some work, and they're quite hard to kill. So I think in this one I outflanked one of the dreadnoughts because I thought one of them could sit fairly safe on the board, but trying to put two of them down plus everything else.
Yeah,
started to run out of space.
too well.
The aggressor started on the board. I think he got a little bit baited by his own secondary cards because he drew cleanse, and we had 4 objectives across the middle of the board here. So obviously thought, oh, brilliant, I can cleanse for 5 points.
Yeah.
But he used his I think it was his custodian guard squad with a character, the blade champion. So we thought, right, well, they go stand in the middle of the board. They're quite tough. I could hold some primary. They're going to cleanse whilst I'm here because they have assault weapons. But that put them in range of the aggressors, who are actually quite good into that profile, because it just makes them take a big handful of 4-up saves. And there's no way around that. It's not damage 2 that he can try and reduce or anything. So when the aggressors then deleted that, I felt like I was probably ahead, but then I had a slightly ropey turn in which I thought that the Deathwing Knights were going to kill a tank without any support, and they just decided not to. So then the tank that was supposed to be dead just shot out of combat into the dreadnought. Both dreadnoughts disappeared in a turn. I thought, oh dear. But then because he'd left the tank in combat in order to shoot, because if it falls back, it doesn't do anything, then they could kill it and then move across to deal with some other stuff. And then Trajan died to his own knight exploding. It was a lot of dignified end for Trajan. But I think it was probably in a pickle by that point anyway, because he was in combat with a lot of knights.
Yeah. So what did you think of Custodes then? Like, is it really like we know the tanks are incredible. They're insanely good. But after the nerf and of the balanced data slate, do you think they have what it takes at the top tables?
Probably not, but I think the angle that he'd taken was the right way to try and get around that by adding in some knights and taking your tanks. So you've got quite a lot of durable hulls.
Yeah.
Also high OC on the knights.
Yeah.
What you want to do is be able to force the opponent to commit something and then hit them with your blade champion wardens or whatever, who are still a very good unit, advance and charge, hit very hard. But I think he probably didn't have enough chaff, or didn't have it in the right place that he needed to put his custodian models out first, and then so he sort of went down on trades, whereas what he probably needed to do was try and use them to trade up at some point to hit something that I needed to use to probably deal with an armiger or something.
Yeah. So losing that unit early was probably
I think he got what looked like a good card, but turned out to be a bit of a trap in the longer run.
Yeah.
Well,
that's good. That's good though. So that's day one.
Another good game. He also ended up 3-2. Pierce with his Death Guard ended up 4-1. So he had a really good run with Death Guard.
Wow.
Showing that they can do some work.
It's almost that like people just don't know what it does, so they overcommit stuff, and then it's like, oh well, that was a mistake, and then
and it played fixed very well because he had lots of Nurglings that can do his homers, and he could he had enough units to try cleansing on missions, or his Plague Marines are good at taking objectives. So any mission in which the opponent needs to stand on 2 objectives, then Storm becomes quite good because he can attack the primary.
It does, yeah, I like it. So that's day 1 covered. You're 3-0. You go.
Yeah, I feel like I've already done pretty well at this point, and we'll sort of see what happens the next day. I really sort of felt like the pressure was off.
Yeah,
that's probably in a fairly good chance of trying to get to the 4-1 finish at this point.
Whenever I go to a 2-day tournament and I manage the 3 wins on the first day, I always have like a sigh of relief, being like, okay, I can drop a game. I can do it now.
I remember hearing David Gaillard say a while ago, like, you need to always put yourself in contention. Always get to 3-0 on the first day. And it turns who you play, right? Because I think Vic and Yokel from their team played each other in round 2 or round 3, so you can just hit another top player in round 2 or something. But
yeah, you can. Sometimes you get a good run, sometimes you just have hard runs. But yeah, so day 2 comes around. You obviously going into the winners category. So what did you get round 1?
I had Sam Nash, who I played before. He's a fairly well-known, sort of particularly around maybe the sort of south of the UK. I've played him before, I think. Yeah. Where we were in Kent or Brighton. I think it was in Brighton. He's playing Grey Knights.
Tricky.
Another faction that's had a big boost recently. So alongside Death Guard, I was very grateful for someone giving me a practice game into Grey Knights at Bad Moon earlier in the week, especially as he was a new player, but he was actually very good. Said he played Kill Team before. So I think if you go into Grey Knights it's easy to read it and go, right, yeah, got it, know what they do. And you need to actually play it and go, wow, okay, now I know how
they're coming off the board, they just start, then they come in with
playing around 3-inch deep strikes. He has the sigil, so he had quite a lot of flamers, and he was trying to get them to shoot out of line of sight. So he teleports his paladins over so they can see the scouts that are tucked into the middle board, and then some flamers from his side objective can burn the scouts out of line of sight, which is quite neat. And then the paladins trying to pick up my other scouts. So he was clearly trying to sort of get rid of some of my chaff and mission plane screening so he could then start hitting my better units. I pointed both of the dreadnoughts 3 damage plasma at the paladins, said, oaths on them, I'm going to shoot them. Do you want to sigil out the way? And of course he then has to. He's going to lose about 5 or 6 of his guys. So I thought, I'm going to accept that. I'm not going to shoot them, but then the sigil's gone. So I thought that's the trade I'm willing to make, right? If you want to use the paladins early, take them off, but then I don't have to play around the sigil for the rest of the game. It's like when someone sends the avatar and you're like, okay, it's going to kill some stuff. I'm going to deal with it, and then I have to stop thinking about it.
Yeah. So, I like it. I like it because it reminds me.
Sigil out the way early.
Yeah, because that's the if you're targeted by an attack, you can re-deep strike or move.
Yeah, they can teleport, so he has to immediately put them down again. But because obviously they can then pick up again at the end of my turn, I think. So he just puts them away in his backboard, and then
it's once per game, done.
It's once per game, reactive to being shot at. They also have the one way if you move within 9, they can hop into the sky. So you have to be very careful about that. I have basically a similar rule because I've got the squad tactic stratagem.
Yeah.
So some agency in playing around that. But you can't just walk up to them and expect to charge them because they'll just miss away into deep.
Well, that's good. So what was the score in the end? Because obviously that's a very tricksy game.
Yeah, I think it was something around a 10-point win or something. He needed to get Storm Hostile Objective on his cards in the last turn. I think that would probably have flipped it to him in combination with getting 15 primary points. So I think the Dreadnought that was still left in the middle of the board charged his paladins so that they wouldn't then they couldn't fall back and then do things, or they couldn't hop into the sky. So he wasn't then going to be able to get onto the home objective, which I think was probably the crucial thing.
Nice. That's great.
I'd attacked his home enough that he was forced to use the other Terminator squad quite defensively to sort of clear me out of his backfield, which they did, but then meant that they were sort of committed to one side of the board. The Paladins eventually took over the objective on my flank. My Terminators took the objective on his flank. So we sort of really pivoted around a bit.
Oh, yeah. So are you finding as you're going through the tournament, are you finding that your list is very, very adaptable to whatever is thrown at you? Because you've had 4 games which are completely different.
Yeah, very different armies.
It's so different. So you're liking the list at this point in the tournament?
Yeah, definitely. I don't really feel like I would change anything in hindsight. I mean, there are units that you look at and think they could be something else. Like the Heavy Intercessor squad's good, but you've got other options for those points. The little Gravis Captain was useful, but again, you could find other things to do with those points. There aren't a lot of useful things in the Space Marine book around sort of the 90-point mark. A lot of my lists, I find myself going, right, what am I going to do with this?
Yeah.
So in hindsight, I don't think I'd change anything. Maybe if I got smashed by someone in round 1, I'd be saying something different. But it felt like everything had a purpose. I thought the Heavy Intercessors were actually quite useful, and the durability boost over the basic Intercessor or Assault Intercessor squad often felt relevant because there isn't anything in the army for people to point heavy bolters at or something. There's no easy kills for Night Spinners to teleport the Incarn in early, which like a basic Space Marine squad could easily die to. It's only to 2 Night Spinners.
Oh yeah, definitely. So yes, you're going now into the last game of the day. Yeah. So you're feeling confident. You're going for 4-1 minimum.
Yeah. So it's actually
no stress at all.
I think by this point the pressure's quite off, and we're just having quite fun games. I played against Thousand Suns.
Oh, nice.
A guy over from Italy. Another nice opponent. I think he was a little bit down on his chances in this matchup. Thousand Suns had definitely got. I mean, there was a point where he just looked at a Dreadnought, said, "You don't get a save," and then burnt it to death with flamers. So I mean, when one of your things is, "Look, I've got a 2-up save and Armor of Contempt," and someone says, "What if you didn't have a save?" Then they could really do some work.
I like that.
He probably, I think he found that he overcommitted to some of the early trades. So he used Magnus to fly over and get rid of the sniper scouts because he couldn't leave me with a lone op sat on an objective. But then that allowed the aggressors to come in and target Magnus. And then I think he said, oh, I think I'm losing, so I'm just going to throw everything at you, and I'm not sure you are losing, so this is a bit scary. So the Terminators teleport over, kill the aggressors. The Arrowman squad burn a Redemptor to death, but then I'm able to respond with enough force in both sides with the other Dreadnought against the Terminators with some Inceptors, lots of 3 damage there, and the Deathwing Knights going into the Arrowman squad, which then sort of means that both flanks have turned in my favour, and I didn't really need to do anything for the rest of the game.
How did you find Magnus?
I think he's one of those things that's got defensive buffs that the aggressors get round.
Because of the auto wounds,
Like he's got -1 damage, and I think he's got the ability to blank a save and re-roll a save and then CP a save. So if you're shooting lots of las cannons at him, he's probably very durable because you get 1 through and he goes, nope, 0 damage, and then he fails an inv and he goes, right, I'm re-rolling that and I'm re-rolling another one, and you can take a lot of anti-monster firepower to kill him. But when you say instead you're like, okay, we'll just take 34 up saves against damage 1, then he hasn't got much way around it. He can sort of get down to the last couple and go, well, I can blank one of these.
Yeah.
But there was also like a Dreadnought looking at him, and the Gravis captain could have charged him. So
wow.
I've always liked having lots of damage 1 shots with a bit of AP with probably some rerolls or something, because it feels like when you rely on high damage shots, it can get dicey.
Oh, definitely, because we've all had that where you shot a 1-shot weapon, like a missile off a Rhino or a las cannon, and then you roll that 1 to wound, don't you?
Yeah.
And then you go, fine, I'll CP it, and you roll the 1 again. And
yeah,
then you just throw that dice at the bin.
Not to roll above average saves, which doesn't happen at the crucial moments, unfortunately.
No, but this is a big win for you, wasn't it?
Yeah, I think the score. He played a fairly gung ho game after losing Magnus, so I think the score probably. By about turn 4, he was just sat on his home objective and seeing if he could score any of the cards he could draw, and I just had control of the board, so I didn't need to do much to score anything, because you can score most of the cards once you sat across the middle of the board.
Yeah.
I think it was fairly over by about turn 3 or 4. So then the score swings in. The score swings in my favour, but
you just keep winning, don't you?
There were definitely moments in the game that could have gone the other way. I was quite scared. I hadn't played against Thousand Suns either, so whilst I was aware that they'd lost some of their, they'd lost quite a few points in the data slate.
Yeah, they did.
And probably the Terminator build is a bit less scary to me than the lots of character build that can, sneak in and switch off your saves and do a lot of mortal wounds and that sort of thing. It's a bit more slippery.
Yeah.
There was, he'd got to 4-0 with it, so it was definitely doing work.
Yeah. He's definitely a good player, and he's definitely running the list exactly how it should be. But sometimes you just get the bad matchup for yourself. So like this, you could simply have just been his bad matchup where he just
it's possible.
Just bounce, and because they rely on a lot of their tricks, and if you can't out trick someone, because you got your Phobos Librarian with your no deep strike Aidan, so you just lock down a part.
Yeah, so he wasn't going to be able to sneak into the backfield too easily. I think the guns on because he couldn't shoot at long range very well. Like I think the what's it called, the beast, the Vortex Beast or something.
Mutilith Vortex Beast.
It has a long range anti-tank shots, but he wasn't going to kill a Dreadnought in a turn from range. Like he'd have to get Magnus near it or something. So I think that meant that he had to deploy quite conservatively, because otherwise, if I went first and could shoot plasma at things, then he was going to start losing stuff.
Yeah.
Which then meant that he couldn't easily deal with my sort of skirmishing pieces without having to slightly overcommit to them. And then I just sort of got ahead on the trading on both sides, and then he had to use his hammers, and then I still had hammers of my own to respond, if that makes sense.
Nice, yeah. So that's it. That's LGT over, is it? Oh no!
Yeah.
Wait, there's a shadow round. So you finish your official games of LGT undefeated, and what happens now? You go into you make the top cut, and
So because of some people in the 4-0s getting a draw, I think Adam Lane and Marcus Hinson had a draw. which sounds like a fun game. That meant that there were 20 players on 5 wins. So we need to, what they then want to do is cut them down to 8 to come back the next day for the quarterfinals. So everyone's playing another round. Now paired into Byron Sidhu, who has taken Chaos Demons through into the shadow round, which I think
that's impressive with demons.
Yeah. So he had the main thing in that list that scares me is Shalaxi, because she'll kill Dreadnought. Because I don't have a character in the Terminator, she actually doesn't get her rerolls there, which actually works in my favor.
That's right.
She'll kill a Dreadnought in an activation quite comfortably. I think the Dreadnought, even because I think there's a strat to boost AP or something, at which point even armor content means I'm saving on a 5 or something. So it's very unlikely to.
It's quite risky.
So he obviously has Bellacor's can't shoot me outside 18 aura.
Yeah.
He goes first. We're playing lengthways now as Hammer and Anvil. Puts some screamers on a side objective quite tucked away, puts the other screamers on the sort of front, on the middle objective nearer him, because it's a 6 objective map with sort of slanty rows of 3. And then Be'lakor and the other stuff stay fairly far back, so I'm not going to be able to push up close enough to shoot them. So I advanced the Dreadnought forwards and stuck it in the Dev Doctrine so it could shoot the Flamer Squad in the middle, just to leave him on 2 objectives, and trying to block out with my scouts. I think I was cleansing on the first turn. So then he picks up Be'lakor using the teleport strat, pops Be'lakor back down, obviously has to be 9 inches away because the middle of the board at this point isn't in his shadow. But he can then put the because he can pick up both greater demons if they're in his shadow in his deployment zone, and then he can put
drop one, drop the other
6 inches away from me rather than 9, which I think I was aware that he could do this, but could probably have pushed the scouts out from the Dreadnought a bit more. So he had to shoot the scouts away basically with his psychic weapons, which happens fairly easily. And then Shalaxi has about 7-inch charge into the Redemptor that I push forwards, which she makes, and then she kills the Redemptor.
Yeah.
Which is okay, because I think, all right, fine, now I can try and respond to these greater demons that have come forward. So we put Oaths on Be'lakor and brought the aggressors in to shoot him, and relied on the Terminators dealing with Shalaxi if they go into the Assault Doctrine to advance and charge, which they half did. Unfortunately, they wasted a bunch of CP by needing to CP reroll the advance roll because we've got 1, and then failing like a 6-inch charge, I'd CP that, at which point they arrive, as does a Dreadnought, but they don't have any CP left, so we can't use the Lance stratagem. So they're wounding on 5s, they don't roll particularly well. He rolls slightly above average on his Feel No Pains, and Shalaxi is still on about 10 or 11 wounds. I don't think I even got below half strength.
Oh, wow.
Then she stabs the other Dreadnought to death. But the aggressors have removed Be'lakor because, again, they're not too fussed about -1 to hit, because you're just fishing for 5s.
Yeah, nice. So
then he can't do much with Shalaxi other than stay in combat with the Terminators, because she can't leave and do anything. So she kills like some Terminators, but not very many, because once the rerolls disappear, particularly to the damage, then there's a chance you need like 5 damage to kill one. So she kills a couple of Terminators, and then they're able to beat her up, at which point he's probably lost too much of his damage dealing units.
Yeah, and you can start playing the ball control, and
he charges Scarbrand. I put some Inceptors sort of forwards of Be'lakor to also shoot him. I think I had engage or something, so that was scoring me points. And then he could drop down on the edge of his deployment zone, so in his shadow, and only have about 6-inch charge into those Inceptors, so they died rather horribly. But that meant that the aggressors could then shoot at Scarbrand as well. Didn't kill him, but damaged him enough to leave him without great options. So then he's taken fixed engage in all fronts and homers, I think.
Oh yeah, that's good.
So he's dropping stuff in my corners to score his points. So he's scoring quite well on secondary, because my home objective is in the middle. So though he can't land close enough to attack the infiltrators, he can just have units in both quarters. So he's scoring in the corners. So he's scoring all his secondary at this point. But I don't think he got any engage in turn 1, or maybe only got 3/4 or something. So his secondary score ends up pretty good, because he's deployed a homer in every turn and is engaged in most turns. Although by the end of the game, he was struggling to hold both of the quarters on his side of the board, whilst also having the the lone operative in the middle of the objective, because then it's not in either quarter for engaged. But I was dominating the primary and also had bottom of turn, so I was going to score primary at the end as well or something.
Oh, nice.
So by having the Deathwing Knights in the middle of the board, the Redemptors were dead, but the Deathwing Knights and the Aggressors in the centre meant that I was winning on primary and also scoring quite well on my own cards, because once you got the centre of the board,
you hunker down in the middle, you got all the firing lanes there.
Yeah, so his secondary advantage isn't enough to overturn a primary advantage.
Nice.
I think we were done fairly quickly because Byron and I know each other. He said, "I'm really glad I'm playing you." I don't know who he didn't want to play, but I think he knew that we'd have a friendly game, and I feel like the pressure was off for both of us.
Yeah, it's nice, isn't it?
So then there's a slight anxious wait for the other games to finish. I was thinking, come on, Zach, it's 8 o'clock, mate, tell them to finish. Because 2 games are going to have to happen afterwards, because he's down to 10 people and needs to eliminate 2 more people. So thankfully I wasn't one of those, because it was done on strength of schedule, and because 3 of my opponents from the main tournament went 4-1 and the other 2 went 3-2.
It's good.
I actually had the highest strength of schedule after 6 rounds, I think.
Wow, that's great. Well done.
So I think there was a very good game between Chris Radford and Nassim that I need to go back and watch on the War Games live stream. So apparently this was a cracker, and I mean, those 2 guys are both incredible players. So anyway, I then went home, tried to get some rest, and took myself back the next morning. Thankfully, my boss knows that I play Warhammer, and I sent him a message late at night being like, might be online about lunchtime. I could see that I'd paired into Nassim with his double Wraithguard brick. I know Nassim's very good. So I didn't expect to be able to compete very well with that. But I thought I'd rather turn up, lose, and then go out of the tournament playing than just not turn up. And Nassim said that. He said, I was like really hoping you were actually going to come back and play the game rather than drop overnight. Because some people, obviously, if you've depending on your work or stuff, like I think Mike Porter got to 5-0 and then had to drop. So obviously it's not everyone's available to play on a Monday. Certainly Warhammer on a Monday morning, I don't think it's something I've ever done before. So yeah, the round 7 is the quarterfinal. There's basically like 7 fairly well recognized WTC players, and then me. And really quickly to Nassim. I tried to make some plays, didn't work. It was over pretty quickly. But I think we had a laugh, and I was happy to go home with at least 8th place. I mean, the placings in the quarterfinals depended on your path to victory within the top cut. So Nassim, I was backing Nassim to win, because then that would put me in 5th. But unfortunately, he then lost, I think, to Liam in the semi-final. So that left me in 8th place. But I think exact placings are slightly arbitrary.
Yeah, I mean that is insanely good. Like, you had a terribly hard run. You played so many different armies that, you know what, if you're like, oh, what do I need to practice against? I need to practice against Necrons. I need to practice against CSM. I need to practice against this. You didn't get any of them. So
yeah, I know. I thought a lot about Necrons. I thought a lot about Tau. I thought a bit about CSM. I thought about Eldar. I hadn't thought much about Death Guard, Grey Knights. These armies that have got better that you haven't yet had a chance to play. So obviously now going forwards, I'm a lot more aware of those armies.
I think the meta's been busted wide open with this. And
very.
What's your impression? So obviously going into it, I think on the previous episode of this, I discussed with the boys what they thought the top cut would be, and everyone was Necrons, everyone was Eldar, everyone was CSM, everyone was Nids. What would you think now?
I think before the tournament, I would have expected, Eldar, Chaos, particularly because of some of the people that were playing those factions, like, we've got Manny or Liam on the Chaos Space Marines.
Yeah.
And I expected to see Tau do very well. I think Tau did do well, just because they didn't make the top 8. I think Tau are really strong now.
Yeah, I agree.
And Adam Lane in our team did well with his Tau. I think Craig in our team did well with his Tau. There were a lot of Tau players, certainly in the 4-1 bracket. So I think Tau are really good. I think Necrons maybe got a bit solved. We've heard David Gaylard saying that he was going to take them, and about a few days before list submission, thought, hang on, absolutely everyone's talking about how they're going to beat me.
Yeah.
And jumped over to his Imperial Guard instead. And I could see that I can see why he's thought that, because
everyone teched for it.
Yeah, every time anyone posted a list, someone said, "Huh, but can you kill 20 Necron warriors?"
That's what was going on in our chat. Adam Lane was just like,
"Yeah,
can you kill?"
I think there was a panic that not only could you lose, but you could also lose to someone could just put their army down and walk off, and you'd lose.
Yeah.
It wasn't like, well, I might lose to Eldar, but yeah, I mean, they're obviously good, and if it's a good player, then sure, like I could lose to a lot of things, but that you could lose to anyone just stat checking you with Necron warriors, I think was a bit of a panic, and I think probably too many of the other armies knew what their answer to it was, like Space Marines, Tau, probably CSM, maybe Eldar had a bit of a struggle into it, but there weren't enough Necrons near the top to stop them in the end.
Yeah.
So I think, maybe enough armies passed that stat check that I think that also then puts people off playing Necrons, because they say, do I really want to just roll the dice each round and see who I'm against and go, oh, no, they've got me, never mind. Because in as much as you say, well, if you can't kill them, there's not much of a game for you. If you can, then what does a Necron player do? Like, I think they're going to have to be very good to play around that matchup from their sides, and I think sort of saying, oh, no, my warriors are just going to die if they expose themselves, maybe that people were put off trying that faction. I do think Necrons are good, and they can build a very strong fixed secondary game, which is something we've noticed a lot more people.
A lot of the top players going fixed.
A lot of people going fixed, and a lot of people being able to play fixed if you don't give anything up. Because I thought that my list was quite good at setting itself up in a sort of board state in which it denies a lot of points. You can say, right, you won't score area denial if I took a guy in here. Assassinate's pretty difficult. You're not going to be able to deep strike him in the backfield. If you don't have an easy objective flip, then you sort of say about half the cards are now quite hard to score.
Yeah.
And I don't give up any fixed kill secondaries.
No, and you're durable.
But people were building to be able to take 2 passive fixed secondaries.
Usually teleport homers is one, and if
so Nassim was taking homers and behind enemy lines because he's swooping hawks to get there on turn 1.
Yeah.
Byron took homers and engage, which is probably a little harder in the long ways map, but on all the diagonals he was always in 3/4 and able to 3-inch deep strike into the 4th. So he was probably then means that you don't need to, because I've had lots of times you draw a card, you're like storm hostile objective, and you look at an objective and go, oh, cool, I can flip that, and then you use your expensive unit to do it and lose them.
And so you can have chaff, haven't you? You've got to have a lot of chaff.
You've got to have chaff, but then chaff that can flip other chaff off an objective. Which,
for me, my chaff
bait you into wasting your units. So a lot of people going fixed. That's probably one of my main observations. I just say that most factions now seem that they've got some play. A few people trying to make Admech work. I think Johnny and the team got them to 4-1. So
he did. I was very impressed with that. Yeah.
Mitch Beard with his sisters got to 4-1 and only lost to a semi-finalist. So like even these factions people think aren't as good, like people putting in the work. And
Votan as well.
Particularly finding ways that they can maybe play a fixed secondary game with those factions and have an organised game plan. Means there are very few. I don't think there are any armies that I think against a good player. I just think they can't win this. I think pretty much any army with a good pilot has some play into the field, and you could take. I don't think there's any faction that you'd be surprised to get 4-1 at basically any event.
No. I think the meta is a lot more diverse. Yes, there's still Eldar who are completely not nerfed. Come on, Dick, Games Workshop, you just didn't nerf them. And it's so frustrating. But then there's so many different armies now and builds that can just go the distance. So it's really good. And we're going to see with the new Marine Codex out, now people are going to be looking into that and what tech they can have. I'm sure your list will probably get upgraded in some way to...
Yeah, very excited to try some games with the new book, definitely.
Yeah, definitely.
I need to get it pre-ordered.
Yeah, don't forget to do that. Well, thank you so much for coming on, and it's been great talking to you about your LGT experience and going in a bit more in depth about the different armies you face, because there are going to be people who are playing Death Guard, there's people playing Grey Knights, so it's been really good to hear what your kind of your thoughts and theories are on everything. So we'll wrap it up here. So thank you so much, and well done for going undefeated and making it to the top guard. My Goblins!
God. Thanks, Tom.
Yeah, and I'll get you on in the future for sure. Because when the Marine Codex comes out, people are going to be wanting to know all the tech. You never know, aggressors might be the way.
A little points nerf though, which is a shame, but we'll see. I think aggressors are good.
All right, guys. Well, thank you. Like and subscribe, and bye.
Bye.